Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. This is a religious message. It has a very temporal value in front of you, in your face, in this life, in this world, right now. If you have pro-black leanings and pro-black concerns, but you're not with the pro-wack community that the pro-black community has become, this message is for you. This Ramadan, to me, has been marked by watching, not really even the black manosphere argue, but watching black folks on social media argue over an interloper. I'm not going to say the interloper's name. We've already touched upon that. And as I've stated, dismissal, awareness, but dismissal would have been the best stance for us to take, and we did not. But that's not all. There's more. There has also been an issue of apparently somebody else whose name has come up, and it has come up in discussions with me, discussions I've either heard or in which I participated. And a trusted source has mentioned this name multiple times, and I'm not going to say the source, because if I say something wrong about the person mentioned, a lady, I shouldn't even say lady, a woman, you'll check me. Black men always get checked. We get checked even when we don't make a mistake, or even when we're right. A woman who used to take everything off in front of men for money now calls herself goddess. Now that I do know because I've seen screenshots. This is the blasphemy that has overtaken the pro-black community and the community. And I say the pro-black because this was something that was in the pro-black community before it became today's pro-wacks. Blasphemy was the weakness. In order to feel good about ourselves, some of the originals would resort to calling each other God and goddesses, stating that God was a black man or that God was a black woman. Stating that God was human was part of the problem. That's what the blasphemy was. It was not the blackness of God that was blasphemous. It was the humanity of God and the divinity of man or woman. In order to feel good about ourselves despite what others had done, God became human and human became God, as long as that humanity was black. And that was not a unanimous thing amongst all pro-blacks, but it was there. This has been the Achilles heel of pro-black movements. Polytheism and idol worship became the Achilles heel of the children of Israel when they left Egypt, as well as materialism. For us, it is materialism and blasphemy. But it is still idol worship. It's just that in this case, the false deities and the idols are humanity and melanin. And lately, it's become the human female genitals and mammaries coated in melanin. I do believe in human rights. Ironically, even for Western Europeans, whom I don't love because of what they've done, but even I believe that they should not be disparaged because of their DNA sequence. No, we have something much more convincing for which to disparage them. It's not their blonde hair, it is not their blue eyes, it is their deeds, it is their history. And if you take merely that which they have written in their own history books against themselves, you have more than enough. When you start looking for other things that were not written in their history books, you come up with even more. But the fact that they're arguing over whether or not to teach their own history in schools tells you everything you need to know. I still want to point this out, though, if I may, my people. One of the things that's been so bothersome about this is that this has gone unchecked to the point that now people can sit up here and come in having done anything at all and go not only from what they used to do to being decent, which is normal. Repentance is a real thing, but they go straight to divinity, bypass everything in between, and go straight from stripper to goddess. Well, we as black men in the manosphere cannot afford this, and I'll tell you why. Strippers and women who outright sell the box, and there's plenty of overlap in between them, have the worst views of men in many cultures and societies. They view men as just being low down, filthy, nasty, stinky, funky, dirty. And the reason is because the men that come to them for these things. These are the men that will interact with them. Good men can't have much to do with them unless they're just related or there's some other business, and I mean real business arrangement, not just selling box or selling lap dances. Others outside of that, no. There's a validation that they don't get from the men that are not the way they view men to me, so they can only way they view men to be, so they can only view men a particular way, because they can only get exposed to these kinds of men, much like police officers view people as criminals. We men in the black manosphere, black men in general, cannot afford to let these folks come in and start speaking for pro-black circles, but they've already done it. This woman to whom I'm referring, and whose name I'm not going to say because of the press and fame she already has and does not need, is supposedly pro-black, but calls herself goddess. This same woman called Jessica X a mutt. Now, I don't know that I would always agree with Jessica X. I don't hear her enough to know when we disagree. I don't have time, as I've stated before. But I've heard from trusted sources enough about the one who calls herself the goddess, the false goddess, that also called Jessica X a mutt, disparaging a DNA sequence, which is beneath anyone that thinks they are divine or even cares about being judged by the true divine. She can say what she wants about Western Europeans because they've already earned it. Even I would not disparage them for their DNA sequence, but if she disparages them, it's probably based on what they've actually done. Okay, fine. Western Europeans. I don't even go after the Eastern Europeans except the ones who follow the Western Europeans. They're not a part of the problem. Have not been for a while. I would state that, in the end, and this is quite sad, these are the ones that have come to represent modern day pro-blacks, because the elders are old. If they're alive, they are tired, and they should be. Advocating for black people back then was a very difficult, demanding, and thankless job. I know my parents did it. And they got betrayed more often by our own than they did even by Massa and Zaddy. I mean, Massa and Zaddy didn't really betray them per se, but they were given more grief from our own than they were from Massa and Zaddy. And now, well, you know what? Now they're considered mutts anyway. They could never be poor enough. And they would never be stereotypical enough to win the support, and if they had been, they would have been seen as useless and they would have been less effective anyway. My father once was called a sellout by a crowd because he tried to help them not go to jail while still having the march that they wanted to have. I'll never forget that day. It should have been a warning sign. The NOI in our hometown gave my mother grief because she was in a position to have discussions with them that were public, to give them a chance to tell what they want, to say what they wanted to say. But when they tried to go through her to demand free advertising that was not hers to give, she stated it's not mine to give, it's not the policy. And they went and gave her grief, called her all kinds of sellouts, until Farrakhan in one of his tours stopped there at that town and had to tell the local leaders of the NOI, of the leaders of that local chapter of the NOI, to leave her alone. And he said, she's a mother to our people. He had to do this to get them off of my mother's back for doing her mother cuss word job. When you are really pro-black, you ain't down with the BS, and that includes blasphemy, false deities, let alone upholding oneself as a false deity while having a pretty low view of men, and it must be that. That was straight hypocrisy. Not only to call Jessica X a mutt, but also to sit up and play monkey sounds to derogate Africans in general collectively. It is one thing to disagree with some of them because they're not advocating for black folks as a whole enough. It is something else altogether different to derogate the whole of the continent collectively by playing monkey sounds. While upholding yourself as a deity. I have talked about what the solution is for our people before. Many did not want to hear it. Many did not want to hear me, especially when I've stated that I'm ambiguous looking, sit up and tell you that a religion associated with other ambiguous looking non-black but semi-brown or not knowing that they're black, thinking that they're brown white people, could have possibly be a solution for us. Many of you did not want to hear this, especially when I stated how I looked. Don't worry. Many of you simply think, well, if we took on the solution that you said, Black Mind, then we'd have to pray with these other people. Don't worry. There will come a day when you won't, because they're leaving it. Step by step. They're giving it up. I'm watching it. See, it's not Islamically wrong for me to teach male and female students provided certain protocols are observed. That's not wrong. But the reason that I now have mixed classes is because the decisions were made because these folks here are giving up their religion in piecemeal. Go Black to Africa's talked about that. He's seeing it happen. But in all honesty, when you get international with your blackness, there is a unity that is beginning to take place. Where I live, the Dosari are beginning to marry women from Nigeria. The Dawasar, I should say, that's the plural form. The black ones. Yeah, this is going on. I've already talked about how it is that in the UK, the black Jamaican who becomes Muslim marries the Somali. And it's okay. Look at me. An African-American Creole who became Muslim, I'm married to a Somali and happily married. One of the things that is very depressing now is that not only do I have to live away from my family, those with my last name back in the States, but now I must live away from my wife, and I was not prepared, nor was she. It's bothersome. I was relieved when I lived away from my first ex. I never lived with my second ex. Didn't know what that was like. I didn't like leaving her. She was an excellent wife. But I never had the experience of actually living with her because I didn't live in Morocco. Couldn't. I've lived, for the first time in my life, I have lived with a wife for years, at peace. Like what my parents have. And my company snatched me away. And when I can stick it to them, I'm going to, and I'm about to. About to give these N-words the blues, Lord willing. I'm saying this during Ramadan with a clear mind. Because they are not willing to take themselves seriously. Not even whether religion demands it, they're not willing to do that. But when it is us black folk that are Muslim, we are now experiencing a unity, and even many who are not. It means something when you go to Ghana and you see Ghanaians riding around with Ghanaian and Jamaican decal stickers, showing solidarity with the Caribbean, the diaspora. It means something that George Weah married a Jamaican. Black folks who will reach out to each other in many cases, but those of us who are Muslim get to remain united. This is what's going on here. But instead, those of us sitting on the solution are told, not just politely, but oftentimes we are told with hostility that it is not a solution and that actually we're part of the problem. And then the same people that think we're part of the problem want to turn around and say, no, you know what? She's Goddess Queen Mother Earth. And the whole time, she just wants attention from men whom she doesn't want. That makes her no different. The pro-wack sistren in that space, and I'm only calling them that. Sisters, because they're only sisters to each other, are like Miss Ann. They just want to be able to discriminate against others and not be discriminated against. That's what they're not only wanting, but expecting and looking for and demanding. And they just want black men to be their attack dogs to make sure they can do it. And that's one of the reasons I want to say to some of you that are pro-black, but also want to address gender issues. Why? Do you cape for them? The black manosphere is not caping for an interloper from Chicago that decided to settle across the pond. There are some who are doing it, and they don't speak for all of us. They never have. As a matter of fact, they've had their positions contended by others in the black manosphere. I'm not one of those that has contended their positions, but they've had them contended, argued. I've listened and learned from Angry Man, but I'm not a subscriber. I don't follow him. I've listened and learned from Obsidian, but I don't follow him. I've listened to the lead attorney, and people want to say he had on the cape, but when she was in the chat, from what I understand, he put her in her place too. Black manosphere is being falsely blamed, and part of those who are leveling this false blame are the same ones trying to tell you that you should worship them, but they can't even get the facts straight. How divine is that? That's not a goddess, and that's not a god. That's a human being with a bunch of flaws, more so than the rest of us. More flawed than you, and they want you to worship them, but they don't even want to acknowledge your existence. What they should be doing, if you are really pro-black, especially if you're pro-black and you got the height and the muscles and the degree and the income that they said that black men need to have in order to submit, they should be lining up, knocking at your door, willing to share you and bend the uck over. They should be trying to submit. They should be at the stove, cooking, and then when you walk in, lifting the dress and saying, listen, do you need a little relief? Get your mind right while I'm cooking. Trying to catch that cream pie with their cervix. Because while you are sitting up here, and shout out to the one who gave me this analogy, you know who you are. Thank you, boss man. In case you're not know, say Ayumi I talk about, right? You know. But I'm not going to say your name because I'm not going to let any. I don't want anybody thinking you are backbiting them. But regarding the one about whom we discussed, you, sirs, actually, because there are others like you, while you were sitting up and watching closely the light-skinned and the non-black, to protect the black woman's feelings from their and our existences. You are the frog carrying the scorpion across the flood or across the river, watching out for us. And while you are looking behind you as you carry the scorpion across the river to try to make sure that we aren't following you all across the river, you don't understand that you're looking at us, and the scorpion is so anxious to sting you that the venom is already dripping off the tail onto your skin while you carry them, because when you get them to the other side, they're going to sting you because their tail is full of venom and itching to sting somebody. They can't keep that venom in them. They must sting, or else the venom will turn and kill them from the inside, and a part of them knows this. So when you carry them to the other side, that scorpion is going to boo-boo on you, pee on you, and sting you all at once. And the whole time you were looking for us to make sure that we didn't follow you and continue to trigger her just by existing. Stop pulling the capes out for them. We're not out here defending any interlopers. But you are defending those who can't wait to sting you because they still hate you. And if you love them, they hate you more for loving them because they can't understand why anyone would love them, because they know who they are. They used to take it off. They used to take it all off for the wrong dudes, whether they were professionally stripping or whether they were just run-of-the-mill women chasing after the wrong guys, trying to compete by getting the one that they all wanted. It's the same thing. You cannot ever earn enough, be enough, do enough, and have enough for her to submit to you. They're just more angry if they have more than the black men. But you know what? At some point, you're simply going to have to ask yourself, if the ones closest to you who chose men that had less than them, chose them because they had less than them, so that they could act the way that you saw them act, instead of thinking that they just were driven to act that way because of what their men didn't have. You might be putting the cart before the horse and trying to process your own trauma from observations of your youth. Because we now know that they're walking past men who have what you have to get with men who have less than themselves. Crimson Cure might be worth listening to so that you can understand that. Crimson Cure does not bow to any false god. She does not bow to any human being. She bows her forehead to the Creator. The ones for whom you cape call themselves Goddess, Queen, Mother Earth, but can't have a good opinion of men in general, especially the men that love them and who cape for them. And they can't help but wonder, when you are caping for them, they can't help but wonder what the F is wrong with you, that you will go out there and do this and conquer and build and study and become degreed and earn this income for the likes of them. They can't understand why you would do it. As far as she herself is concerned, why you cape for her, you should be chasing after these exoticals that trigger her. She's stuck where she is psychologically. You can't rescue her from it. Your best bet would have been to settle in a traditional area with a traditional woman, black or not. But in any case, you don't believe that my solution is a solution. If you believe that she is the false deity she attributes herself to be, that she occupies the throne of divinity she claims to occupy with her name and others like her, then pray to them for guidance. and see where they guide you. And ask yourself, in any position in life that you have, that you wanted to have, did that come from their guidance? And if not, then they're not gods or goddesses. Could you call on them for help without a phone, regardless of your location and regardless of their location, and expect them to even know you were calling them? Then they're not gods or goddesses. I hope that this has been of benefit. Thank you for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual, non-select male power, just because them scrippers and false goddesses don't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day, that shall be carried out by only the one true God. Again, thank you for flying with me on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever. There is no God but Allah.